Well, hello everyone, it's Rebecca and welcome back to Hands and Feet Homestead. Today I was going to talk to you about planting potatoes. It is potato planting season and I think most people are thinking about getting their potatoes in the garden to get a nice harvest this coming late summer or fall. And so I want to talk to you today about that and show you how we grow our potatoes. In the beginning of the video, I'm going to take you through and show you my seed potatoes I saved from last year. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with them and cut them, getting them ready to plant into the ground. And we're going to talk about some things like what to do with sprouted potatoes. And at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you some footage that I had from last year's planting. I had footage from all the way from cutting my seed potatoes all the way into harvest. So I just wanted to share with you how we plant our potatoes and take you along from beginning to end to just give you some ideas on how to start your potato patch. So if you're just here to see the process from the beginning to the end, you can go ahead and fast forward. It's around the 18-minute mark. That's where we have that video footage at the end. So I hope you find this helpful and let's get started. So today I'm going to go out into the shop where my seed potatoes are right now. I don't have the best conditions to store them in, so a lot of them are incredibly long and spindly. I think some of them look okay. They have the normal sprouts on them, but most of them are really long. And from my research and what I've seen from other people and what they had to say about it is a lot of people just lay them down with the long sprouts and they say that they get a good potato harvest from it and they don't have an issue with it. Some people say that it's not going to give you a very good harvest, but for the most part I've heard that it will be fine. I think I'm definitely going to plant some like that for sure. I'm going to assess and see how much I have, and I might buy some more seed potatoes. I will say in the past I store them in my pantry usually because I have the shop here. We do have a wood stove in there, but we don't always have it running, and I'm really scared I'm gonna forget one day and let it freeze in here and then they'll all be ruined. So I keep them in my pantry and it stays really cool, but potatoes like it really, really cool to keep them from sprouting. But I will say in the past, 3 years ago or so, I went in there and checked on them all winter. I saw them starting to send out the little sprouts on it, and I would just continuously just pluck them off. I would take them off. Maybe 3 times I did that in the winter, and then I planted them in the spring, and I got a good harvest on the potatoes. It definitely worked. I will say that I don't really know if it was the greatest potato harvest in the world, but I didn't notice it being lacking in any way. So I do know that it does work if you do take them off. People sometimes say that you shouldn't do that because you could risk damaging the eye, but I guess if you're careful to take them off, then it doesn't, because it definitely has worked for me doing that before. Whether it would have been better to just leave them and let the long spindlies grow and plant them whole, would I have gotten more potatoes that way? I'm not totally sure, but it is an option because I definitely have done that before. But this I haven't tried. I have not tried to lay them down with the long spindlies, so I might try that out this year and see what happens. So let's go check them out. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So here's what I'm talking about. Here is the mess that I have here. So, I mean, it's not terrible. That will totally be fine. So I'm going to go through these. Oh, and see, look, that's perfect. And these weren't stored in the best conditions, but look, that's perfect to plant. That's really ideal, like what you're looking for a potato to plant. So I can even cut this in half. All you need is technically one eye. 2 to 4 eyes is better. An eye is just where you see these sprouts coming out of. And so I can go ahead and just cut that in half and let it cure just for a day or two. Just let it kind of scab over and then it'll be ready to plant into the ground. So here's another one. I think these better ones I'm looking at, I'm gonna cut them, and so that I have more to plant. I think that's a russet. And there's one. That one doesn't have long spindlies. That one looks good. So like this one is super long and spindly. But if I don't need to plant ones that are like this, if I have better ones, I'll just go ahead and plant the better ones that I have. So I'm gonna get these organized. I'm gonna figure out how many potatoes I have, see if I think I should buy some from the store, some seed potatoes, or if I think I'll be good with these. Okay, so these are my picks. These are the winners of the batch that I'm gonna use for my seed potatoes. And so these are, I don't know, I can't tell at this point because they're all kind of shrivelly a little bit. But these are the Yukon Gold and the Russet. And I'm going to be cutting them so that I get more potatoes from these. And I can show you how that process works. These are some of the purple, I believe these were Purple Majesty. It's a purple interior on there, so we'll plant some of those, but we eat the least of those, so I really like to just stick with Yukon Gold, a Russet, and then a good red potato. Those are the things that we normally eat and can preserve easily and all that. So it's fun to do different varieties, but it's best to grow what you actually are going to use and eat. So anyway, so I picked the best red ones that have the shortest sprouts on it. And then some of them have longer sprouts, but I can cut that into 2 potatoes and that'll be fine. It's not too long. So yeah, there's another good one. So I can cut those into, you can cut it more than in half too. You can cut into thirds or quarters even, whatever you want to do. So I'll show you that process of how you can cut your potatoes and let it sit for a day or 2 to let it scab over, and I'll show you how that works. So before I start cutting the potatoes up, I just want to mention there's always been a little bit of a debate from people and gardeners on whether planting a whole potato or cutting them like I'm about to do is better, if you're going to get a bigger harvest or bigger or smaller potatoes depending on what you do. And there's a little bit of disagreement between people. It makes sense to me, at least, when I think about if I were to plant this entire potato, since each one of these eyes on here are gonna send out a shoot, and that's what the potatoes are gonna end up growing off of the sides of these shoots. Like, that's what like these are. These long spindly things. All these will grow out and those are gonna be potatoes. So in my head it makes sense that planting a whole potato with all of these sprouts on it would potentially produce smaller potatoes because it's gonna be more crowded. I do know some well-known gardeners say that as well, but then there's people that swear by planting the entire thing. Maybe you get more potatoes, but just smaller ones in that case. But it makes more sense to me that they would have more room to grow if you were to cut it. But that's just me, up for you to decide. So either way will work. Either way you're gonna get potatoes, whether you leave one eye or all of the eyes or anything in between. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you before I started. So basically, like I said, this is a nice potato here, so I like to leave 2 eyes on at least. So I'm probably gonna cut, oops, I just broke a little piece off. I'm probably gonna cut this one here, like that. That's a little loose. And I might just leave that whole, I might leave 4 on that one, we'll see. So we'll go, there's another little eye down there. I'm gonna cut through that. So do that. There, and that one actually has 3 eyes on it, and that's fine. And then when you plant your potatoes in the ground, you want your sprouts to face up, obviously, so that it is going up towards the top of the dirt, towards the sun. So this is what obviously is a fresh cut potato, and that is potentially a recipe for bacteria getting on there or mold growth. So we just cut that. So this is what we want to cure, to just scab over. So we're gonna leave it to just dry out for a day or 2, and then it'll be ready to just plant into the ground. Now a lot of people recommend to put this powder, I can't think of the name right now, it's something with sulfur. I'll write the I'll write the name of it right here. Just look at the text here. But some people say to coat that with that when you plant the potatoes to reduce the risk of any mold or bacteria. Since this is an open cut on the potato, it could potentially have some room for some bacteria growth or mold, things like that. So some people say to coat the potato in that to reduce that. I also just watched a video from M.I. Gardener. He's a very, very awesome gardening channel if you're not familiar with him. He has a lot of great information. He's been doing this for a really long time, but I just watched a video of him today. I've never heard of this, but painting on with a paintbrush some honey does the same thing, because honey is an antibacterial. So if you're looking for a little more natural, I don't know quite how natural the sulfur or that other powder is. I personally have never used that. I've never used either, and I've never had a problem with it. So, but that's up to you. You can look into that if that's something you want to do. So anyway, so we have that one, and then let's see here. I'm gonna cut like right here and leave those ones on, and then so I'm gonna get 3 potatoes from this one potato here, and I could have got more. Definitely could have got more, but like that, and that'll be fine to plant just that, and like that. There you go. Got 3. So we'll do one more here. I'll show you. Definitely gonna do that. Leave those 2 there. And I'll leave that one just like that. That'll be good. This is a nice russet. We'll cut you right down the middle, and we'll leave that eye on there. So I have the spindly one. And so since I can cut this, these ones are looking pretty okay. So I might just cut this like that. Like that, and then I'll have one good shorter stem on each side here. And one thing I was just gonna mention is it seems like the red potatoes don't quite last as long in storage. From what I've noticed is all the red potatoes seem to have just grown these long strands, and all of the yellow and russets seem to have kept a little bit better. So that's something to consider with when you're preserving your potatoes. Plus, red potatoes are also known for being good canning potatoes, which is great. So if you got a bunch of red potatoes that are starting to go ahead and can them up, use them in some soup, or you can can them up in just by themselves in broth or water. I canned a bunch of potato leek soup. I made a video this last winter about doing that to use up my potato harvest, and that worked out really well. So there's lots of things you can do with potatoes. It's one of those things that are just an amazing thing to have in your garden. So I had 2 Yukon Gold potatoes that I took out of the pantry when I harvested them, and I just stuck them in my refrigerator, and I'll show you those here. And here they are, and they are, as you can see, perfect. You could just eat them. They're not even shriveled up at all. They've kept perfectly in the fridge. It's the very beginning of May, and we harvested them last October, and they're going strong. So I could take those out of the fridge and let them chit, which C-H-I-T. It's called chitting, and you're letting these sprouts form, and that's what those are called. So I could take those out of the refrigerator, let them just sit out at room temperature or like a sunny window or something like that, and let them start to sprout, and then do what I'm doing, cut them or plant them whole, whatever you want to do. But that's an option. If you have room in your refrigerator, you can stick them in there, as long as some fridges you gotta be careful because they might go down to freezing and ruin your potatoes. But I just wanted to mention that if you have the room to spare in your fridge, or maybe an extra refrigerator in your garage, that kept my potatoes, those 2 potatoes, really, really well. So I'm going to show you this little guy here. It's a little small potato. It only has really 1 eye growing on it, and they are a little spindly, but so I'm just going to plant this whole, and I'm not going to obviously try to cut it because there's no other eyes on it. Another thing I wanted to show you was I came out here, let's see, probably in March, and I was looking at these and I was like, oh, look at all the spindles. What am I gonna do? So I came out and I remember I knocked off all of these sprouts off of this one, and look at it now. I mean, it's growing it back. Like I mentioned earlier, I have done that in the past where I just kept kind of pulling them off throughout the winter, and then I just planted it in the spring like I normally would, and it was totally fine, and I got a lot of potatoes from it. So as you can see, that looks like a really good potato that you would be looking for to plant right now. So I just wanted to show you an example of that. So that's an option if you see your sprouts growing. Okay, so I got them all cut up. I'm gonna go ahead and put them back on top of these, kind of like a cardboard thing. You can put them on top of like egg cartons or something like that, just so it has good airflow all around it while this part is scabbing over and curing. So we're just gonna go ahead and put these on top of here, and we'll leave them for a day or 2. Okay, I got all my potatoes here. I'm gonna go probably put them up somewhere in the shop or inside, I'm not sure yet, and let them cure over for a day or 2. And now I'll just take you through some of the footage I have from last year, from us growing potatoes from seed, from this stage all the way to harvest, and just talk you through the process of that and show you how we grow our potatoes. So here we are last spring. I'm just cutting up my seed potatoes. These were seed potatoes that I did purchase from the store last year. They had a bunch of different types and varieties that I tried. So here I am just cutting them just like we just talked about. And so after you cut your potatoes, you want to put them face up in something like a cardboard box. You could put them on some newspaper, maybe an egg cartons, something that'll give good airflow while they cure and scab over for the next day or 2. And then I like to get my potato bed prepped while they're curing, so that all I have to worry about the day that we're planting is getting them in the ground and not having to do all the bed prep all in one day. So we had really hard packed ground right here. That's why I'm tilling here. You can also do a no-dig approach. So here we are a couple days later, and they are all ready to go in the ground, and they are scabbed over. So when we go to prep our beds, you're going to want to dig a little bit of a trench. It should be around 8 to 10 inches wide, and you want it to be around 8 to 10 inches deep. So here I have wider beds, about 42 inches wide, so I can fit 2 rows of potatoes really nicely there. So when you plant the potato, you want to have obviously the sides with the shoots and the eyes facing up. So we'll put them down like that. So in the root, when you see the root sticking out like that, that's what's going to produce the potato plant. And it's called chitting, C-H-I-T-T-I-N-G. That is the technical term for letting your potato produce sprouts before you plant it out. But even if it doesn't have a shoot coming out, these are the eyes, and those will still end up becoming a sprout like that. So you don't need to do that if you don't want to. It might just take a little bit longer for it to break through the surface. But okay, so here I am filling up the trench with the potatoes, and I am spacing each potato 12 inches apart. And so now is a good time to sprinkle in or add any fertilizer that you're going to use. I'm just adding in some bone meal here. Bone meal is high in phosphorus and which is good for root development. So I'm just adding that in for a little extra help. And then I will be adding some compost on top after the potatoes emerge. And then of course you're going to want to take your rake and just cover all the potatoes back up with the dirt. Here they are, all done. I have them all covered up, and then of course you want to water them in very well. So here we are about a month later, and you can see all the potatoes coming up and emerging. Here's a close-up of one. This is what you are looking for. You should start noticing them coming up after about 2 to 3 weeks. We have 5 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 3 we planted. These 3 I planted earlier. I waited a couple weeks in between these 2 rows because I decided to go back to the store and get some more seed potatoes to fill up those. So that's why these are a little further along. What I need to do now is to take the hoe and just weed through all that, and then I'm going to get a bunch of compost and just dump the compost on top of there. A couple days later, after I had weeded and hilled up the potatoes a little bit and got the compost on, here I am planting some alyssum on the ends, which is supposed to be a good companion plant for potatoes. And then here we are about a month later after that in early July, and they're really looking good. And we have some nice purple flowers forming on some of them. So they got a little more weeds coming up here, so I'm gonna rake. What I've been doing is as the weeds come up, I'll rake the walkways and just mound it on top of the plants, because they're going to grow the potatoes under there, and you don't want sunlight to get to the potatoes or they'll get ruined. So you want to keep mounding them. So here we are at the end of August, and you should see your potato plants looking very dead. That's what you're looking for when they start looking like this. So that means that they're ready to be harvested, and so you can pull them up anytime from now. You can leave them into the ground. You just want to get them up before your first frost comes in the fall. So here I am just showing you some of the potatoes that are underneath in the dirt, and make sure that you are keeping the dirt over the potatoes. You don't want any potatoes to be getting exposed to the sun. They will turn green and then they will be bad to be eating. So just make sure you're keeping the dirt over it if you're going to keep them in the ground, but they'll be happy and fine in there. So here we are in October. I harvested my potatoes a little bit later than I normally do. I usually do it in September, but we had a little bit of nice weather, so I waited a little longer, which is fine. It was before the frost, and so here we are just digging them up. We're using a hoe to just carefully pull them all out, and the little kiddos were helping. It's really, really fun for the kids if you have little ones to help. And here's some of the harvest that we came up with, and then just putting them in boxes, getting them all stored up. We had to wait a week later to harvest the rest of the bed, and we did have rains in the forecast, and you want your potatoes to be dry when you are harvesting them. You don't want your soil to be wet. I did use a tarp, and I put it over the rows that I still needed to harvest, and that really did a good job of keeping the dirt pretty dry for when we went to harvest it. So that's a good idea if you have rain in the forecast and you can't get out there. Making sure the soil is dry when you're harvesting is important because 1, it's easier to dig up the potatoes, and 2, it's easier for your potatoes to cure and get ready for long-term storage, and they'll store better that way. So if you have the opportunity to turn off the irrigation in your potato bed, I would do that a few weeks before you harvest. But here we are. We just are continuing our harvest, and this is one of the boxes we ended up with from this day. And I also wanted to mention, when you are harvesting with a hoe, just do it really carefully because as you can see, I sliced a whole bunch of my potatoes, so just be careful when you're doing that. Obviously, if you damage your potatoes, they're going to go bad quicker, so you need to use those up first. So when you're done harvesting, I brought them inside the house. I kept them in cardboard boxes, and I let them sit by my wood stove for a couple days just to get really dry before putting them into long-term storage. If you have a really nice day out, you still have some nice weather, you can just leave them out in the garden, outside in a sheltered location for a day or two, and then you can put them in your pantry or wherever you're going to be storing them for long-term storage. All right, well, thank you for joining me today, talking about planting potatoes. I hope you found something helpful or useful from this video. We really appreciate you watching. Please remember to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below. Let us know how your potato planting's going, how your garden's going. I love to hear your comments. So, all right, we will see you in the next video. Take care and God bless.